What's up, healers? My name is Cam, and I am your host of the podcast Unpacking Within. On this podcast, we really like to practice truth, transparency, and just vulnerability. We try to take a pause. We at least just try to dissect and understand what's happening. Last week has been a whirlwind. I feel like I went out of town to visit a friend for his birthday. Saw some people that I had kind of knew, but not really like I used to see around in Seattle. I was just reminded that I really don't like going out to clubs. For real. I think for me, it's more about and it's very much like, let's buy a section, let's buy a bottle, let's sit up and look pretty. I just feel like, to me, a good time in a club is like, you go into a club, you pay for yourself to get in your friends, maybe your friends, but you're paying for an experience to just have fun. Like, clubs are cheap fun. And I feel like it's so turned into something else, which makes it somewhat annoying. Not to say that that was the experience, but as far as like going out right now, like I don't always like the whole rah-rah energy. And I really like for things to kind of just be cool, calm, and mellow. Like I could always replace a club visit with just a night in, to be completely honest. Last week was kind of a whirlwind. I traveled to Oklahoma City to visit a friend for his birthday. He came out for my birthday and I felt so happy to even support him. So shout out to you. And again, I saw some people that I had seen around in Seattle when I used to live around there. We didn't really hang out. Actually, we didn't hang out at all. But I would see them. Of course, I would like wave just out of, respect. It was some of the same energy that I saw in Seattle. And not to say that I miss it, but I don't. So myself went, my husband went, my husband's colleague went, and two of my friends were supposed to go, but one wasn't able to make it, but the other one did come. And I just go to say, like, I sometimes don't understand how people can travel without money. I feel like it's essential. You cannot, unless you just make plans ahead of time, I feel like you don't make plans to go out of town with nothing at all. I don't know if that was the case per se, but I'll give you some background here in just a moment. But I will say this past week has been like a very reflective one for me. Me just kind of like seeing things more clearly for what they actually are and not for what I hope for them to be. I say that because I feel like there was this person that I had met earlier this year, and I felt like our relationship was promising. Promising in a sense of, I don't feel like I have to beg my friends to be friends, if that makes sense. I am very much intentional when it comes to my friendships, and I'm intentional on how I show up in my friendships. And I don't think that I've always received that, and I feel like I've always tried to give the benefit of the doubt to the person. However, that's neither here nor there. I feel like for months and months and months, I tried to give the person like the benefit of the doubt and be like, oh, the person's young. I feel like I would make up excuses. And I think this past trip to Oklahoma was kind of like the cherry on top for me. And I don't love the person any less. I think it's more like I realize what the relationship is. And I hope the person that will find this won't find it shady or just find it to be untrue, but also to maybe receive it from an awareness perspective. And I'm really just sharing things from my perspective. The person is definitely a good person, and I feel like the person means well. I just don't think the person is there to be considerate around communication or like how they may be perceived or how they make people or like make me feel sometimes like rushed into like, oh, you got this going on, like let me put this on your plate. And it's like, ooh. I first like received that, I think it was like years ago, when I had first got like my real corporate job per se. And I would build really good relationships and really strong relationships. However, I would always like bombard them with requests from me, and I would expect for them to drop everything. And I never took into consideration how disrespectful it may be. I felt like I didn't really respect their time. I didn't respect their energy. I didn't respect their space. There was a lot of things that I didn't really take into account as to what the other person might have been going through. It was really just all about me. And I won't say that like I'm still there per se, but like I'll still like at least try to keep it at the front of my mind to understand this is some of the things that people may be going through. And here's what you have to like think about. Also, I think that, again, the person that I met this year, in like an August time frame, we are now in December. So it's not been that long into our relationship, But I feel like there's been so many different events that have kind of packed on that have allowed me just to see things a little bit differently. When I say that, I also say that with love, respect, with transparency. And again, I don't want my podcast to feel dramified or anything of that nature. What I do want it to feel is more awareness and self-awareness, really, for how we show up in the world. I feel like there's so many things that we don't really pay attention to on how we may be perceived or how people may be experiencing us. I will also say that reciprocity in a relationship is so very important. And it's important in the sense that in order to get a friend, you have to be a friend. What does being a friend mean like? Being a friend means like sometimes just checking up on the person or understanding how their communication language is. I don't think it's very hard to, but I think that people also are used to maybe just getting over on people and people not necessarily checking them. I am at a state where I don't have to check you in order for you to understand me. I will give you the response in the moment that I need for you to understand about what's going on with me. If I'm angry, upset, or hurt, or sad, whatever the case may be, even if I'm happy, like I will give you those things because I just try to be present in each of those moments, especially when it comes to my friends. I just don't think that people always give other people the same respect. And I just think it's plain disrespectful. I have never once put myself in a predicament to where I'm just solely depending on someone to be A to Z. And a lot of times I feel that the relationship had become that, not from a financial perspective, but more so that I don't necessarily care how this is coming across to you, but more like this is what it is and you're just gonna accept it or not. And it felt like in order for me to be that person's friend, that was what I was gonna have to deal with. And no, baby, 30. 30 minutes. You got 30 minutes. You got 30 minutes to wrap this up because I will walk away and be okay. Again, a lot of events that have happened between August and now to where I've just realized. And I think for me, the imbalance in our relationship showed up very clearly when we would always go out and the person wouldn't have money to, I don't know, maybe put it on a hookah, even if it was $5 or $10 or $12, whatever the case may be. Sometimes, like, I ain't got it, like, y'all got me this time. Like, sometimes that's helpful. But for you to consistently show up without much to offer from a financial perspective, from a advice perspective, like, it's giving, again, the relationship is not reciprocal whatsoever. I don't think that, again, I've ever showed up in relationships like that. And I don't want to start accepting that because now I feel like it's just the bare minimum just to say, oh, I have a friend. I'm not that kind of friend. I'm the friend that supports and that shows up for people in a way that I want them to show up for me. And I won't back down from that responsibility as a friend. Again, in order to get a friend, you have to be a friend. And to be a friend, you got to learn who that person is. I'm not a person that, again, I don't need many friends. I just don't. I don't need many friends to walk alongside me if I want to go somewhere or go on a walk or go on exercise. I'm perfectly fine by myself. So I feel like I read something a while ago. It was like people that are used to being alone will walk away from a situation so fast because internally I feel like I'm protecting my peace. Externally, it feels like, oh, da, 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 maybe you think I'm better than you. No, that's not the case. But I've worked so hard to get where I am. And I kind of like it there. And I'm not willing to sacrifice what I've worked hard for you, for your benefit. So I say all that to say I feel like self-awareness is a virtue and it's something that I don't really take lightly. And I just try to show up for people in the same respectful way that I show up, or that I want them to show up for me, and vice versa. So I feel like as a form of like self-healing, that is very important to understand just that in itself and to not just walk around like unaware. I had an old boss. She was like, do you know how you're perceived? Like, do you know what your brand is? And I was like, I think I know what my brand is. This is when I did not know about public relations and brand management, etc. But I had saw so much of myself in her. And I had saw how she had made a way for herself based on skills that she had honed in on. And I just thought it was like top notch. Like, you fucking go. You deserve everything that you have and then some. And it made me just kind of step back and realize that everybody has a brand, everybody's perceived some kind of way. And I just hope that I always come across, at least to my friends or in my relationships, that I'm respectful of your time, I'm respectful of your energy, I don't take your time for granted, and I appreciate you. And sometimes those words can go a long way. And now that I just said that, I don't even think I've ever, no. No, the person has said, I appreciate you. I can't say that. I can't say that. And I do think the person, again, means well. I just don't think that the person is at a place and time in their life to where they may be ready to receive something like this very head on. The person is somewhat emotional. They're a little bit young. I want to say like they're 26 or 20, I think 27. They're not always the most mature when it comes to maybe addressing something. But what I will say is when that moment had came up when we were in Oklahoma and the person had texted me and they were like, hey, I'm gonna need help getting into a club. Now, if you need help going into a club, we're gonna sit this one out, babe. At least right now. I just know that I feel like if there was anything that I could switch around, I just really wish that you would understand how you are perceived and how like other people are receiving you. And it's not just me, it's other people too. And I don't know what you may have going on in your life. Again, I don't love you any differently. I will definitely kind of step back just a little bit, and I'm sure you will watch this. I'm not being messy by any means because there's so many other things that have transpired by since the relationship has transpired with the person that I know. And it's not just been, oh, can you help me do this? But I mean, I've gotten text messages from the person like, I need to pay this, I need help with this, etc. And me trying to, I don't know, think about resources that I had to give the person. And I don't always want to be in that space. I'm not always at a beck and call, if you will. I remember when I showed up for like certain moments in my life to where I might have been like asking people for stuff. But again, I've always tried to be reciprocal. And not only that, but it's always been give and take in my relationship. Like you scratch my back, I scratch yours. And that's just where I am in my relationships. And again, I don't see myself turning from that point. But again, no love lost to the person. People don't know who I'm talking about. I want to talk about the self-awareness and how healing it can be. The self-awareness piece healed me because again, I had walked around for so long not necessarily knowing how I was perceived, how my brand was, how I showed up in work, how I showed up out of work. I just thought that, I don't know, the grass is just green. And I had never taken into consideration what other people thought of me. Not to say that I always care, but it is good sometimes to have like a little like fork and just be like, oh, this is how this may make this person feel, etc. I walked around for the longest without having that awareness, and I'm so glad that I do have it now. I'm not gonna say it's taken this long to understand, but it's definitely taken me at least like 27, 28. So I feel like he's at that point, and I do think we could be great friends. I just don't think where we are in our relationship will be beneficial for me to try to withstand it or to hold on to the relationship. I'm not saying that I'm letting it go, but what I am saying is I'm going to take a pause from it and I'm just readjusting some things when it comes to how I show up and how I want other people to show up for me. That's going to be consistent. I scratch your back, you scratch mine, and vice versa. Since stepping away from the podcast, it's allowed me to kind of structure my thoughts, or restructure my thoughts really, and to understand what I'm going after, if that makes sense. One, I'm going after consistency. Two, I'm going after my dreams. And three, I'm continuously going after the life that I want for myself. And I will sing that to the highest praises because it's so true. I don't say that just to say that. I say that because I want the other person on the other screen that's watching this to understand and see when I create the life that I want, as I already have, you will see that consistency and hard work and dedication does pay off. And I don't think I've always had that lesson in my life, at least growing up. I will say after I moved in with my godparents, which I have to talk more about that too. After I moved in with my godparents, I had a very prime example as to this was what hard work looked like, and this is what the fruit looked like. There's so many times that we see people and we see the fruit of their labor, but we don't necessarily understand the differences of like the stages of the work that actually happened to get them there. I remember when I was younger and my godmom was in law school and she would travel back and forth from my hometown in Chattanooga to Nashville. And it was about 2.5 hours. And she would go, I think, every Tuesday and Thursday. And like, I think sometimes like maybe 3 days throughout the week. I look at that now and to say like, you did that for 4 whole years. And I don't see how she wouldn't be proud of herself. And if you aren't, you should be, because you deserve it all. You worked your ass off and you climbed mountains and you worked late hours coming back home from Nashville at like 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. It was just so crazy. But I say that to say I had that as a small example to show me of what hard work, consistency, and dedication look like. And now she is a practicing attorney in the state of Tennessee, practicing estate planning. Essentially, I believe estate planning is when you have some kind of assets that you would like to be divvied up, maybe like when you pass away or when you turn a certain age or when your children turn a certain age. She helps you plan where things go, when they should be released. She helps you understand the differences between, okay, if you put somebody as a beneficiary on your bank account, it doesn't mean that they get total access of it once you pass away. There's certain things that you have to have on paper in order for the person to actually get it. Shout out to you. I love you. And happy birthday. Her birthday was on the 12th of December. So this is such a shout out to you. And yeah, I'll just go with also saying that the relationship that I am not necessarily resenting, but I do have some irritation. And I felt okay with not necessarily addressing it with a person just yet because I didn't necessarily want to give it my energy. If I gave it my energy, I want it to be in a creative way. I don't think it's been something that only I have said to the person. That's just facts. I think it's been something that the person has heard maybe in different ways, but I don't think that I've been the first person that has said something or that has planned to say something. This isn't the first time that you've gone through this. And I don't come from a place of ill will. I just come from a place of just unsure because I don't know what I don't know. And if you don't say anything, then I just will continue to not know. So I'm going to create my own narrative. And hopefully this will reach you to where you reach out to me and, I don't know, say your piece with the situation. I did share my piece with you when we were there. And I mentioned to you how I didn't like something and how it made me feel. And I also know that there were some other things that were said to some other people. So this is my way of addressing the situation. And again, I don't have a problem. I don't have an issue. What I do understand and know that I am allowed to welcome people into my life and dismiss them. And I feel like I welcomed you into my life with open arms. And I don't think that I've always received that, or I don't think I've always received like, I'm a great friend to you, so let me be a great friend to you, if that makes sense. I think that for me, it was more about moving in certain ways that felt true for me. I'm not going to do something if it doesn't make sense. And if something is not adding up for me, then I ask the very direct questions that some people are just scared to ask. And that's not to say that I'm disrespectful with my approach or anything like that, but I try to be very conscious of how the person may be feeling. When's the right time to say something? When's not the right time? However, you can only hold your tongue for so long and you can only create a narrative and a story inside of your head before you start to ask questions. And for me, which I feel like is a great tool to have in my toolbox, to ask very direct questions at the very beginning, because then I don't have room for the cloudy shit. I don't have room for the smoke in the clouds. I am just not there and I don't want to go back there. I feel like the moral of the story with this one is you don't know what you don't know, but also you're not responsible for trying to figure out. I feel like if you are curious and you're trying to understand what the person may be going through, that's fine too. But also, if you don't feel like you can go to the person and even talk or communicate without the person like, oh, no. I don't have time for it. I don't. Again, I don't say that disrespectfully. I just say that as I don't have time for it. I don't have time for childlike adults in my life to whine and cry and to say that I don't know. Like I try to put my hand on. I'm not trying to figure you out, but what I'm trying to do is receiving the same friend that I'm showing up to be. And if that's hard for me to try to figure out, then it's more than likely not worth figuring out. For me, I feel like a reflection thing for me has been like, do you feel like you entered the relationship in a vulnerable state? Absolutely, I did. I remember when I first met the person, and it was at like a gathering at my friend's place. And I had invited them actually to be on the podcast. And what I had felt was a promising relationship, but I also felt like this person is truly like, I'm open to getting to know the person and to like understand who they may be, good, bad, and the ugly, and to create like a good friendship with them. And it didn't work out to be that way, unfortunately. Maybe something will happen down the line, but right now I'm like, no. I think for me, I feel like why the approach that I'm taking works is because, again, I'm in a state of I have to protect my assets. And my asset is my brain and my willpower to continue, again, building the life that I want. And if something doesn't make sense, I have to exit it out quickly. And I do so unapologetically because for the longest, I consider other people, I consider their feelings. I try to create stories in my head for why maybe they showed up the way that they did, but that's not my responsibility. And I'm not going to take on that. I think for me, the part that I was most interested in was continuing to not ignore my inner voice. I feel like people say like the Holy Spirit, right? The inner voice in me has always been like, say something, say something, say something. And I think the other side of me was like, no, give the person the benefit of the doubt and allow the person to say something when it makes sense for them. Again, I can only create narratives in my head for so long between, oh, I think something and I'm feeling something, but I'm not 100% sure, but I plan on bringing it up. And I can only go so long to be like, okay, I'll let them bring it up. I'll let them bring it up. And there comes a time where, again, I feel like adults just have to be adults and have hard conversations. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just think that some people aren't willing to have those hard conversations. I do think for me, the moral of this story is to really continue to listen to my inner thoughts and understand that people that I meet, I don't have to put all my eggs in a basket, if you will. I say that to say, I just mentioned that I was very vulnerable with a person and trying to create a relationship. They seem very like, they reminded me of some friends or a friend that I actually have in my life. And I was like, you seem like a very cool person. And it just wasn't that. It wasn't that, to say the least. And I think for me, the icing on the cake was maybe the trip to Oklahoma and looking back at the events that had transpired up until this point. And there had come a point in our relationship to where I was like, this is who this person actually is. And there's not much you can say or do to try to understand it differently. Sometimes I think we try to overcomplicate situations, and sometimes you have to see them for the black and white that they are. You are not a gray space in somebody's life. You deserve to have a definition of what it is. You deserve to have the truth around the vulnerability and how vulnerable you can be with a person. I'm not saying that don't trust your friends or anything of that nature. But what I'm saying, at least from what I feel, is you can have and practice truth and transparency and vulnerability in your relationships, but ensure that it's being practiced on both ends. And if you ever have to question it, address it up front, and don't allow it to go months over months over months. But again, first life, I charge it to the game and I move on. There's no love lost. Again, just like my last situation, I feel like I will see you and I will speak to you and I will more than likely hug you. I don't think that I'll ever let you close to me, if that makes sense. At least not in this time of my life of where I am. On the last episode, I talked about how honesty showed up as healing as well, and how honest sometimes we have to be with ourselves in order to move forward in our lives. And with that, I feel like there's so many tools and so many things that are out there, like podcasts. There's one podcast that I really, really love, and shout out to him. His name is Jay Shetty. and he has a podcast really all about learning about spirituality, learning about how we show up in the world. And I've always enjoyed listening to it just because of the perspective that he has, and just because of who I've always inspired to be or aspired to be in the world. And I'm not to say that I'm aspiring to be perfect, because that's the least. I'm aspiring to be truthful and to be authentic in myself. And if you're not trying to be that, then I just don't have time for you. Yeah, I just don't have time for you. And I don't say that to be disrespectful, but it is what it is. It's my truth. I think for me, one of the things that I talked to y'all about was consistency in my last episode, and remaining consistent in producing podcast episodes. And I will say that this is the second week that I produced a podcast episode, and it feels good. It feels like this is becoming a norm for me, at least from a weekly perspective. I feel like this is becoming a norm for me, because from a weekly perspective, I at least can say, this is my day to record, this is my day to edit, this is my day to publish. And last week was a moment where I got the opportunity to just strategize things a little bit more differently as far as like marketing my podcast and promoting my podcast. Earlier in my podcast journey, I would like put an episode out and that would be it, right? The episode would be out and no one would know about it. And now I'm just trying to take a different approach and to share it and to encourage people to subscribe. But also, like, from a marketing perspective, take small clips and promoting it in different locations. So I will say that that's been helping me. I think I got over 100 something views in within like a 72-hour time frame. I could be wrong, but it just made me feel good, because that was the first time that I took a front seat approach into marketing my podcast and to promote it in a way that I wasn't used to. And I got good results from it. So I just say, shout out to me. Just thank you all for tuning in today. I hope that you felt that you understood the moral of the story, which was really to continue to put yourself in the front seat and not put yourself in the back seat, even when you feel like, oh, this is good, this is good, this is good. It's okay to address things as adults. And if the person is willing to show up in that way, then you can be willing to show up in the way that is comfortable for you, whether that be direct, indirect, shady, non-shady. I don't know. It's your prerogative. At the end of the day, again, show up authentically and show up in a way that you're going to feel okay with sleeping at the end of the night. There's not one time where I've had to question if I was a good friend, because I know that I'm a good friend. I don't have to encourage or to hype myself up to be like, yeah, you a good friend because you did X, Y, and Z. I know I'm a good friend. Point blank, period. And if you've said that I've not been a good friend, I'm open to the conversation. I guarantee you that my perspective will shine light into maybe more of who I am and maybe more of who I think that you may be, or maybe specific situations, maybe that you don't understand or I haven't understood. But again, I think that for me, the time is now to be very intentional with the people that I have in my life, because from a podcast perspective, I am weaving out any distractions that do not align with this podcast. And if you don't align with it, if you're not practicing truth and transparency and honesty, however that may look in your life, I do not want you attached to me. 24 hours in a day, there's God who's your last savior, or who the person that you answer to. You don't answer to me. You don't have to lie to me. You don't have to show up in a way that is not authentic. And I just know that being around people like that, it's like, it's magnetizing. Like, people crave to people that are authentically them, because maybe they feel like they can live through you. Not through me, babe. I see right through it and I let it go. Probably a little bit more faster than I have in previous years. But don't think you can get over on me, and don't think that you can just treat me anyway and I not catch the tea. Because I always catch the tea. And I'll always give it some time. But just know that I would always remain true to who I am, and not allow somebody to just show up in a way that maybe they're used to showing up, and not having somebody in their life call them out on their shit. Not disrespectfully, but just call you out on your stuff. And I'll also say that this, again, is a podcast where we just try to be still and we try to understand what's happening in front of us. And if you don't like it, change it. If you like it, keep it. If it's working for you and it's working to continue creating the life that you want for yourself, keep it. Like, make it great, make it yours. There's beauty in honesty, and I can't express that enough. So, one small thing, I would like yesterday had happened, and my husband's nephew and his girlfriend were over here, and it was just such a joyous time. I really enjoyed just kind of like sitting back, kicking back at the house, and just talking about good times, talking about maybe old times, talking about things that we may be looking forward to in the future. And he had gave me some really good tips. He's a professional, I want to say videographer, but I feel like he's so much more than that. He does great at marketing. He is in like the live sports industry, if that makes sense. So he goes around the United States and internationally. Well, I'm curious if he goes internationally, but he films these documentaries on these up and coming high school basketball players, and he films their journey, and he films and he talks about and markets who may be up and coming that you should be paying attention to. I feel like there's so many other people that may have that POV in their business plan, but he just has a certain edge that I really love. Neither here nor there. He was sharing just some information and some good tips that I should start applying to this podcast, which I will. Let me know if y'all want less of the production or more of the production. I'm more than happy to like take stuff out, but again, I'm taking you along my journey because I feel like that's going to be authentically to me and to my journey. I'm not trying to be somebody else. I'm trying to be myself, and I know that the rest of the stuff will align. This past week has been, again, very just eye-opening and very intentional. And I will continue to walk in that truth and walk on my own lane because it feels good here. So, yes, that's all for today. That's all for this week. I hope that you continue to share this podcast with your friends and with your family. Like, rate, subscribe, and tell me your true thoughts. Leave nothing on the table or leave nothing off the table. Give me your thoughts and give me how I can maybe get better. Give me topics on maybe what you want me to speak about or what you want me to give my own personal perspective on. Yeah, I'm excited to continue growing this podcast and grow my following on here. So again, thank you to my supporters. Thank you to my friends and my family. And I will talk to y'all next week. Bye.